Hello, my name is Sondra Perrone. I'm an associate professor teaching photography, philosophy, and honors seminar courses at STIC. I'm also the gallery coordinator at the Amy H. Carberry Fine Arts Gallery located in Building 28. The Carberry Gallery exhibitions are intended to foster intellectual engagement and dialogue beyond the traditional classroom. This learning environment breaks preconceived notions of a gallery as an exclusive space, while also sharing artists who are inspiring students to pursue their own creative endeavors and career goals. One of the primary objectives of the gallery is to bring to campus a wide range of media, ideas, artistic practices, which expose students to an array of creative and intellectual work. At STIC, fine arts courses are open to everyone, and the importance of visual literacy to every student's overall educational experience cannot be understated, no matter their major. This is the third event this semester in a series of virtual interviews called Carberry Conversations between myself and artists who have exhibited at the Amy H. Carberry Fine Arts Gallery since 2013. Originally conceived in response to the ongoing pandemic, these conversations function as a retrospective of sorts, while also connecting working artists to the Greater Springfield community, covering a wide variety of topics, including origin stories, the impact of current events on artistic practice, and the function of art and photography during times of crisis. Today, I have the opportunity to talk with artist and educator Andrae Green. Andrae is a painter whose work explores the nuances of the collective consciousness that has been shaped by time, mythology, and memory. He was born in Kingston, Jamaica, where he attended the Edna Manley School for the Visual and Performing Arts. In 2006, he was awarded a full scholarship grant sponsored by the Jamaican government and the Chase Fund to obtain his MFA in painting at the New York Academy of Art. His paintings have been shown internationally in the US, Jamaica, Canada, China, and France. In 2012, he was one of the first 2 artists chosen to represent Jamaica at the Beijing Biennial. And in 2013, he was selected as part of the American delegation that represents the US at the Salon des Sociétés Nationales des Beaux-Arts at the Carousel of the Louvre in Paris. In 2019, he was an artist in residence at the Experience Jamaica in Geneva, Switzerland. Green's paintings are included in many private collections around the world. He also had a solo exhibition back in 2016 at the Amy H. Carberry Fine Arts Gallery. So today, it is an honor to welcome Andrae back to STIC virtually to talk about his life and his work.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I am so thrilled. For me, you represent one of the artists that like the oldest period that I've gone back in time with so far. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different artists, you know, and I think I kind of started with the most recent and I'm just working my way back. So it was like 2016. What does 2016 look like? So that's why I have to drop in with this slide. And say, wow, okay, you know, your work has completely changed in some ways. Your life has completely changed.
Oh yeah.
So many things have changed. So I guess my first question is, how are you?
I'm doing really good on a snowy day. I did not think it would be this bad. I wanted to show off the new studio space. But yeah, you know, we make do with what we must.
Yes. Where is your studio located now?
Right now it's in the Baustein building, Holyoke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a nice space. It's the size of my house, so that's good.
Well, some of your work is bigger than a house, so it's good that you have space for it.
Yeah. No, it's a blessing. I knew it was time to leave when I wanted to do a painting, and I just couldn't fit it in the space. You know, it just you can't. You know, so I needed to expand.
Yeah. Well, I want to start with the question that I ask every artist in this series, is what is one of your first memories of seeing art or experiencing art or meeting an artist?
So yeah, so my first experience with art is comic books.
Mm.
Um, Comic books, cartoons, that's it. That's all I knew. Because growing up in Jamaica, where we came from socioeconomically, I didn't have access to fine art until I went to like um, undergrad. So the art impulse, the thing to create, to mimic real life, and I remember this just came to me. My dad was always cynical about it and not very supportive until like I went to college. But I remember once when I was like 15 or so, he he got this magazine with this American fighter jet, Tom Hawk in it. Tomcat, I mean. And he was like, if you're good, copy this, let me see. And because for him, that was a thing. But yeah, and then I did it and it was like, okay. And then so yeah, so that was like my first touching art. I thought I was going to be a graphic designer because that's all I knew, illustration, graphic design. But going to Enamale College opened up a whole world to me. And as I said before, it made me feel at home, you're around kindred spirits. Because before that, I was probably like the only weird kid that would draw in church, that would draw when you're sitting down, that would just draw everywhere, and then just be not only reading Spider-Man, but like literally drawing the stuff out. I remember me and my brother having like a challenge, like who could finish drawing out the whole Spider-Man comic book for the summer. So that's what we spent summers doing. So
When did you know though that you wanted to be an artist, like that you could be an artist and it could be a career?
Do you want the mythology or the real story?
Well, I could start with one and go to the other. I don't know.
Okay, let's start with the mythology. The mythology
Okay.
is that the art impulse always was inside of me. I always knew somewhere deep down that it had to be so. And so I followed the urgings, the burgeoning flower that became the fruit, and so we are here today. But the real hardcore decision happened after grad school. Me and Priya and I met, but I couldn't find a job in New York because the market crashed 2008. So when my visa expired, I didn't, I knew instinctively that I wanted to still do art, and I can't do art on the run. I can't be a Caravaggio, right?
Yeah.
So, I just followed the legal process, go back to Jamaica, and I started working, on like a Heideggerian word. I always describe it as design happens, world end. It crashes like I'm a failure. I got this thing, but through that crisis, art started to comfort me. But consciously, I still was just doing it unconsciously to do it, creating paintings. And then it's not until my son came, 2016.
Momentous year.
Yeah, no, a lot changed. And I think we went through so many changes in 2016. But yeah, it was not until that point when I knew an image of myself would be coming into the world. I didn't want it to reflect back to me like a disappointment that I couldn't be or do all that I felt that was inside me. So that's when it clicked, that this is going to happen and it's no choice. It has to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we're looking at this image now, which is a sketch, a drawing. Do you consider this kind of a standalone piece, or does this inform other work?
Yeah, so there's an actual painting that came out of it, because usually I'm really scatterbrained. So so drawing is a way to, because the ideas come like flutters. you know, like a leaf blowing in the wind. It's here, and so for it's here and then gone, and then so drawing for me is a way to concretize it, and just kind of without it being too bogged down with the actual thing. So you know, so sometimes I get an idea and I draw it out just to see it, just to see how it works, and then it starts to spark the imagination, and then it takes more life, and then color comes in, and then you start to like say, what size should this be? How do you want to feel? You know, say you can see me looking at the thing now, and I'm starting to think like maybe it should be a little bigger than life size, because you just want to relate, but you want it to be a little grand. You know, to get that feel. You want the viewer to cue into a feel of dissonance.
So how big is this? How big is this drawing? How big is this
drawing? From what I remember, it's 11 by 14.
Okay.
And the actual painting was scaled up to maybe 24. No, that's not it. That's
different one.
This one came way earlier. This was in the design crisis. Yeah, in 2009, 2010, when I came back to Jamaica, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do? You know, so it's almost like the COVID period, when it was a lot of introspection for me, like figuring myself out, and then just working through emotionally everything that happened to me in New York, the good, the bad, the indifferent. Yeah, feeling like a minority for the first time, you know, all of those things happening.
Yeah. So you were deep in this. This is a self-portrait, right? Yeah.
It's me coming up on that, because our life experience as Caribbean people differs greatly from a Black American. And I think psychically we experience the world a little differently. But coming to New York, I got to be in a Black American skin for a little bit. And it made me appreciate my own upbringing, and then that's the kind of dissonance that I was trying to come across, bring across with this work, with the framing, with the Paisley, because the Paisley was like kind of integrated into Western culture, but it's from somewhere else, you know. So that's what I was trying to like talk about, and that kind of dissonance, or what the boys would call double consciousness, you know, being aware of you being aware, you know. It's like, Neo, you are in the Matrix, you know. So
but you also have a very deep understanding of our history. You've talked a lot about the importance of art history. Why do you think art history is so important to you?
Well, I don't think you can be a writer without having some awareness or appreciation of Shakespeare. And I love the West. I think the West as a culture is the most plastic and the most universal that we have. It has the ability to expand and incorporate so many different belief structures, and then adjust itself too, you know. So for me, my discourse is always in the West, and I'm using Western modality to kind of conceptualize the world and frame it. So for me, I have to understand where I am. That being said, I have to appreciate also to the other histories that inform my kind of hybridity, as I see it. So for me, you know, and then I just love cool action stuff, you know.
Well, Caravaggio, if you think about comics, you might say like, well, Caravaggio was one of the early comic illustrators, right? In a sense, right? You have this very large, I mean, his paintings are large, like your paintings are large, you know, 10 feet by 6 feet or
Mhm,
whatever.
mhm.
But there's a lot happening in this particular painting of his, The Taking of Christ. It is very much an action shot, right?
Yeah.
And this particular Caravaggio really does remind me of your work, where the layering of the
Mhm,
people, right? You
mhm,
have
mhm.
Christ, you have Judas, you have and you have the guard. They're all like so compressed that you
Mhm,
almost
mhm.
don't know where one figure ends and another begins.
Yeah. And I
It,
think, yeah, for me, I'm going to talk about the maybe the psychological underpinnings of the work, and then talk about like actually, what I steal from him compositionally. So psychologically, I love that literally, if you look from the guy that's holding the lantern at the
Mhm,
right to the, maybe that's John, and the, because we have Judas kissing Christ, right? And we
mhm,
have
mhm,
John on the left, or maybe Peter
mhm.
screaming.
Yep.
If you really cue into it, you can see it as like one string of emotion, and then Christ breaks that emotion. So you have the amazement, you have the attack, you have the kiss of betrayal, and you have the scream, and it's almost like he's trying to reflect maybe the inner workings of Christ in all of that kind of stuff. Because
Mhm,
like this is a garden of Gethsemane where he's accosted. So
mhm.
he's praying with his disciples, he gets grabbed, right? So there must be shock, surprise, and it's this guy that was closest to him betraying him. So
Mhm.
although the outer person, it seems like very calm and stoic,
Mhm.
he's showing the guy right beside Christ, like, oh, and
Yeah.
who wouldn't be like that? So
Mhm.
I like those kind of deep psychological things that Caravaggio plays with. But then also compositionally, you brought about space and that compression of space. It's my belief that Caravaggio had like problems seeing space. No,
Well,
all
he
right,
had
so
problems in real life too.
yeah, he had problems. He had a lot of problems.
He had a lot of
He had
problems.
anger problems. He had problems on problems. He had like egotistical problems where he'd let his dog
Maybe
walk.
anger management problems.
Yeah, dog
Yeah.
walk on two legs, and then people had to address the dog like sir, as sir. He'd stop them,
Mhm.
So he had very austere pretensions and
Mhm.
maybe delusions of grandeur, but
Mhm. Mhm.
all of those kind of personality quirks, if you're being honest to the work, it feeds in and it makes it unique, and it makes it something that we can really engage with honestly.
Mhm.
So compositionally, yeah, that compression to me is a very modernist tendency too, and that's why his work kind of lives with us today and it feels so present, because for us, unlike them, time is compressed,
Mhm.
space is compressed. And especially now I'm experiencing you on a flat two-dimensional screen, but I'm hearing your voice, you're reacting me into
Yeah.
same time. So if we start to imagine a world where everything is compressed like that,
Mhm.
that's to me why Caravaggio still echoes today. And then it also have the dark and the mystery. So there
Mhm.
is, that kind of like mystery to it, because although we know a lot, there is this deep sense that we still know very little.
Mhm.
Everything is curious. Yeah, it's like at the I kind of feel like at the onset of the technological boom, like in the 90s, we're on the cusp, like this is how they sold it to us. You have access to everything.
Mhm.
But the more now, we encounter, we're on the backside of it now,
Mhm.
right? You're encountering fake news. Yeah, you're now it's open that the algorithm is tuned to your likes.
Mhm.
Now your
Mhm.
dislikes, your likes. So it's like literally a totally curated thing to keep you on these platforms and to keep you doing this thing. So then you're not engaging in life anymore, right? You're just engaging in like this kind of hyper neurotic um narcissistic fetishization of your own self,
Mm.
you know. So so yeah, so I think all of that kind of feeds into to like what I'm thinking about how we, you know, engage space too, you know. And
Mm.
so yeah, it's all interesting. Yeah.
So this is some newer work,
Mm-hmm.
right? 2021.
Yeah.
You started, or maybe was it in 2020 you started
In
the
2020, I started them. It was my mentor that kind of suggested that, you know, let's put the pencil away because you're so used to it and you're so good at it. Like you need something to challenge yourself.
Mhm. So
You
these,
know,
but these are these, do you consider these uh well, they're mini paintings, right? I mean, we're looking at three different images, the three
yeah,
separate images
yeah,
of people sort of flying through space or
mhm,
jumping or
yeah,
or move a lot of movement, right?
yeah,
And they're in different, I mean, in some cases legs are cut off, heads are cut off, you're not seeing the full figure, but they're definitely
mhm,
in motion, right?
mhm.
But do you consider these small paintings sketches, or could this just be a standalone? Could this be on its own?
It's both.
Mm,
I call them drawings because
mm,
to me they're still, in a sense, monotone.
mm, mm,
Because if you compare them to a whole actualize a painting, you'd see, you know, it's very pared down.
mm,
So it's like two, three colors at the most, and it's just for me to get a sense of the drawing.
mm,
No on line work and more so off the brush.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
I'm kind of using the ends of the brush to kind of give a mark. And because I'm realizing now after all these years of painting, you know, it's always a mark on that graphic line that interests me. And you can
mhm.
actually see the figure on the left, it kind of looks like Spider-Man jumping. So it's
Keeps
I
coming back.
can't, yeah, I can't get away from it. I love how the
Spider-Man is, yeah, it's a web.
Spider-Man, yeah, Spider-Man.
So this is a different kind of sketch though,
Mhm.
or is this more the base of a painting? And can you talk a little bit more about this series that we're going to get into, called The Divers, and what was your inspiration behind this series?
Yeah, well, the divers came about um just as a response to COVID,
Mm,
um, as a response to the world that we found ourselves in and that we're trying to currently get out of. But these small landscapes are seascapes, is because I had to do them because I've never painted like the external world before.
mm,
So so it was new for me. But the thing is, I didn't want to one-to-one copy. As I was saying before, I'm much more interested in the mark making,
mhm,
even more than the tonal structure. I like where the marks are going, and I kind of it's kind of like a foray into abstraction for in a
mhm,
sense,
mhm,
but also to like the more I paint these, I'm engaging in memory
mhm,
of Jamaica and the sea, and it just ignites a lot of stuff for me, you
mhm,
know.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, let's look at some more, because these go from and so this is a finished one. We went
Yeah.
from the little sketches to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
seascape, which is
Yeah.
very pink and blue,
Yeah.
to, and you can still see in this particular divers four,
Hmm.
you can still see that pink horizon line,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
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 But
So
then
I'm
it
full.
also, you're like, are you jumping into a pool, or it gets a little surreal.
It's
Okay.
every yeah. It's supposed to be everything and nothing at the same time. So part and parcel, I'm trying with these works to imitate how we see and experience the world nowadays,
Mhm,
where it's a little bit of a lot,
mhm,
but yeah, and when you put it together, it seems like a mess, but it's kind of going somewhere.
mhm,
So yeah, so the initial impulse too with the works was to talk about how do you self-actualize.
mhm,
So for me, it starts as play, and I'm looking at my own life. I was
mhm,
doodling, drawing all these years, and then suddenly you're in a place where people are buying your work.
Mhm.
Institutions are asking you to talk about your work, So,
Mm.
but it starts in play. So that's and going back to having my son, as initially I wanted to create like a kind of roadmap for
Mm.
him to see, like, this is how your life can be.
Mhm.
You start at play, and something you're really like curious about, and you
Mhm.
play, because that's what curiosity is really.
Mhm.
You play
Mhm.
through it, and then you start to work out systems, and then your thought kind of attaches itself to it, and the more it becomes part of you, then it becomes a way of thinking, and you think through things.
Mm.
So
Mhm. Here's another example. Well, it's
yeah.
interesting you bring up your son because wasn't one of the memories that you were tapping into for this series was the memories that you had with your father,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
actually people doing this, jumping off
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
rocks or jumping into the sea.
Yeah. So it's a memory of my dad taking us, my family, me, my mom, my brother, and myself, to the
Mhm.
Kingston Harbor, for ice cream on Sundays. But then while we're getting the ice cream, we'd incidentally see boys from the shanty town just jump off into the pier. And I remember once I was like, oh my God, that looks so good. And so I went to the edge and I immediately started to get vertigo. Right.
Uh-huh.
And I tell people that my father would always try to teach me to swim.
Mm.
And I almost drowned like 3 times.
Mm.
So I don't think I learned that lesson well, because he was really good at swimming, and he wanted to pass that down.
Mm.
But yeah, it's kind of squaring the circle in a sense where I'm a dad now. My father passed, and I feel like this is the best part of myself, and I want to use it to pass something on to
Mhm.
my son, or to say something to my son. You
Mhm.
know, so yeah, I haven't like connected all of that succinctly, so I'll make a good thread or comment on it. But I do see that generational line and that circle
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Here's a third one. This is Divers 3. I mean,
Mhm.
there's many of them, right? I mean, there's many iterations from the
Yeah,
drawings to the
yeah.
painting.
And each time I paint it, it's a different composition.
Mhm.
Some stuff stays the same, like there's always going to be a body of water.
Mm. Mhm.
There's going to be the sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's going to be a ledge, because it's like I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember this thing, but to use images that are desperate, right? And I
Mhm.
trying to every time I piece it together in a work, it seems like I'm remembering something else, and it talks
Mm.
about memory
Mhm.
too.
Mhm.
You know, Whole memory is not just a static picture in your head.
Mhm.
I mean, people
Mhm.
that have photographic memory will say something different, but for no average people, like, memory is something that shifts, you
Mhm.
know and every time you remember an event, it changes a little bit, but it changes and adds to. So yeah, and then this one, and then I started to realize, like, it's actually Reuben's Fall of the Damned that is
Mm.
starting to play. Seriously, I'm starting to see so much in this thing, the Reuben's Fall of the Rebel Angels, where
Mhm.
it's this crescendo of bodies. It just looks abstract when you see it at first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite beautiful. And it's not huge. This is not 36 inches by 40 inches, not a huge, massive,
No.
wall. But when I'm like looking at it, I'm like, how many people are in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's a lot, and there's that compression where you have
Yeah.
all bodies falling, and it looks like they're all
Yeah.
falling at the same time.
Yeah.
But in your memory, obviously that couldn't have happened, right? But
No.
that's that compression. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And then also too, I use orthogonal lines to, like, kind of suggest space. But if you really look at it, even like the landscape is like pressed on the figures. And I
Mhm.
think that comes and I was thinking to myself, why don't I make it like deep space? But I like don't want it to be, because I don't want it to. That's why I started to add the stripes in it too, because I don't want it to feel like this is an actual space. I want you to engage it as an artifact, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want you to think like I'm trying to create like a real picture.
A real picture.
Yeah.
This is another example of how you're using sketches or drawings, and going back to antiquity with your bust of David, which again doesn't look like a huge wall size head, although the original marble is 17 feet tall.
Oh yeah.
Michelangelo's David.
Yeah.
But it's a classic reflection on art history, and you just seem to be moving it in with with attention.
It's always looking back to look forward. Looking back to look forward. Yeah.
This was one of the paintings that was up at the and I'm always so fascinated by this one, Andrae.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm like, so how many people are wrestling here? It's like a tangle of bodies. So it's clear that like there's a sumo wrestler. You can see the ring a little bit, right? And there's a suggestion of an audience. But there's so many heads that I'm not sure. Is that the same person? Is that two people? Is that, what's happening here? What's happening?
Just wait, let me plug this laptop in. I think it just like 1 second.
Yeah.
And we're back.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to lose you to the power going out.
No, I forgot that it wasn't plugged in.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is another like Caravage technique where you're using the faces in a sense to kind of talk about one emotion, but the complexity of emotion. Like you're feeling something, but at the same time you kind of express it in multiple faces, so it kind of sets a tone. But then also to this painting is a work in contradiction, because the title Prophet Lunatic Fool, and it just talks about that, because with these works in 2016, I was really trying to push like some I was playing with some more metaphysical things, like thinking about time and presence and perception and things that you perceive just outside of time and space. And like, if I have a premonition or a deja vu, in one sense, I can be a prophet if it comes through and I tell people. But if I tell a certain set of people, I sound like a lunatic, and they lock you up if you say a certain thing before the time, and then the worst part is just to be disregarded, and it's just like having that thing that happens in your mind, you're aware of it, and depending who you are around, you get codified a certain way. So that's what I was trying to do. And it also has another panel that's smaller that kind of reproduces the same image, but at the same time it's kind of like, what did I do? I reversed it just to talk about like that kind of duality, otherworldliness. But yeah, you can see the people in the audience aren't really people. They're kind of like shades.
Yeah, this is another example of a drawing that leads to a painting. The stoning of the whales, right?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily look like whales yet, maybe. I don't know.
No,
or you can't tell where the stones are, but it's a sketch, right? It's a sketch.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of something, right?
Yeah, this
and,
is
and then it turns into this. So So in terms of current events, I feel like this is an example of a
Mhm,
thing where you were responding to
mhm,
current events or political issues in terms of police brutality, police
mhm.
shooting. So do you want to talk a little bit about like your process in terms of getting an idea and sort of seeing it all the way through?
Yeah, so I'll go back to what I said before. Like when I was in Jamaica, I kind of, for the first time, started to rely on art making, producing art, as a way to not only express yourself, but to come at peace with your world. I kind of um, put together things that conflict in the mind to work stuff out. So yeah, in 2016, when all the police shootings were happening, it was like literally being broadcast on social media.
Mhm.
I was like, it's crazy, all the stuff that was happening, and I was like scared, you know. Um, yeah, and I was like really like perplexed, like why did I leave Jamaica to come here just to die? And I'm in Western Mass, and all of that kind of psychotic and neurotic kind of thoughts kind of plagued you. And I was trying to make peace with it, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, so and the title is kind of ironic too, because they can't actually stone a whale,
Mhm.
you know. So I was just talking about that. In, I was trying to come up with a title like what Damon Hirst did with the shark
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
formaldehyde, the
Yeah.
physical impossibility of contemplating death while, So
Mhm.
it was kind of ironic
Mhm.
that the thing that the person that I feel that you're angry with is not the person that pulls the levers of power,
Mhm.
but in a sense, you're still trapped into
Mhm.
this play about of them versus me or me versus them.
Mhm.
But the real thing is to quell the inner conflict so you can manage the outside.
Mhm.
And yeah, this has a lot of feels for me. I think is a very breakthrough piece. And
Mhm.
since then I've always looked at it like I can't believe I did this,
Mhm.
you know. But yeah.
Mhm. Let's look at another example.
Hmm. This one was more is a more cynical thing. Um,
Mhm.
because I have that side of me too. I was told by my good friend Jonathan Diamond. He's the director of Hilltown Youth. He's a psychologist, so he's like, Andre, you're very cynical. As much as you try to be like you're very authentic, you're very cynical. And I was like,
Mhm.
maybe, yeah. So this is where it comes out,
Mhm.
at the end of one body of work when I was done, you know, done
Mhm.
with the introspection into myself in a sense,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and just looking at history and trying to put a flag down and say, this is where I think we are, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
because
There's
it
a lot
has,
of conflict in this.
yeah, there's a lot of conflict, but there's a lot of peace too, because you can see the central character, he's at peace, although
Mhm.
he's
Mhm.
a fool in the same
Mhm.
sense, so it's like a real play in contradiction. And then you just have the automatons that are just in the act of doing whatever they're doing.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
one person that's seemingly self-aware really isn't,
Mhm.
so then yeah, so it's like we're all in this play through time and space and
Mhm.
history and
Mhm.
mythology, and there's no way to know if where you are is good or bad.
Mhm.
The most you can do is to try to take ownership of your situation, and that's what that kind of captain guy was doing.
Mhm.
And yeah, and
Mhm.
at least like try to captain your ship
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
possible. Yeah.
Right. Right. This is a more recent one. This is a
Oh yeah, that's a breakthrough one
Right.
too.
Yeah. How
Yeah,
so?
that
How so?
yeah, this actually started the stripes, and I was going because I wanted to memorialize my son being born, and so this painting kind of started me off. It was kind of prompted by Dante, starting to read Dante, another like pillar of Western ideology where people argue for or against away from, and all of our imagery from heaven and hell, all of that stuff comes from Dante, but I was trying to like see how would it play out now,
Mm.
doing with things that are familiar but not, and then so the stripes, this is the first painting that the stripes actually came in because I wanted to break the viewing from like a normal reading, like, oh, that's a foreground, that's a background, because we don't see space like that. We don't experience time like that, I feel, anymore. So yeah, so we have these, it's kind of absurdist in a sense, because I think that's the only way I can deal with these things now, because nobody believes anything anymore. So the only way to go about it is, in art especially, is to be absurdist about it. Because I'm trying to take the whole history of painting along with me, so yeah.
Well, I feel like in this one, it's almost like little vignettes, like you do have something going on in the foreground. You have the people laying down. You're not sure exactly why, but they're on
But
the
what
ground.
is it? Are they
What is it,
drunk?
right?
Is that an orgy? What is it? Are
And
they
then there's like,
drunk?
is this
Yeah.
like this Jeff Koons balloon in the middle? I don't exactly know, but it kind of has that look. And then you have this young woman who looks like she's being pulled by her umbrella, but then she's being followed by an astronaut,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah, but then you can ask the question, how can she be pulled by the umbrella when there's no handle to
right.
attach? So it's this absurdist thing that, yeah,
Yeah.
that I really like. I like suggesting stuff, but then not giving you anything in the end. Because then it kind of forces you to really come to grips with what you're seeing and really look. Because if you really look at it, nothing is as you expect, so that's what yeah.
Have you ever, Andrae, have you ever had something happen in your work that you felt like was a failure?
Oh
Like
yeah. Oh
didn't
yeah.
work, and
Uh-huh.
and how do you deal with that as an artist? How does failure work as for an artist?
Well, first and foremost, I don't see it as a failure. I see as, all right, so I see creating art for me as the unfolding of my subconscious process. Consciously, I'm aware of a couple things that I want to do, but I'm always aware that the deepest, richest part is the subconscious. So I feel like a failure, something that, like, I want to paint this thing a certain way and I can't do it, or I want to say something, but I don't know what I want. I feel like the subconscious has opened up like a greater thing that's supposed to happen, but I'm just not consciously aware of it yet. So I'm stumbling, right? And so I don't necessarily perceive it as a failure. So what I would do, like I have a painting now, if we're in the studio, I'd show you the problem painting now, because this was a problem painting. And I turned it around for like a year, and I thought it was done because the girl was white first. The stripes weren't in it, but it just was bugging the heck out of me why I couldn't, because I felt that there was more and I couldn't put my finger on it. So putting it away and working on something else, and then coming back to it, because you'll progress. And then with that progression in time and space, you look back on the thing and be like, oh, that was what I supposed to do. So yeah, I don't necessarily see it as failure. And to me, that's what comes to mind. Because it's just like sometimes I feel like you make some big leaps in your work. Like
Mm,
stoning wheels, I feel I've never been able to reproduce that thing
mm,
because I feel like it's probably 10 years,
mm,
whereas where I am now. But
mhm,
right now, currently, I'm trying to like grab it,
mm,
because I think there's something there, I like how minimal it is. But yeah, it has so much gestalt,
mhm,
so, and this too, this is like nuanced and cheeky, and
mhm,
all it is suggestive, it's provocative, it's all of the things that I
mhm,
am too when you talk to me. But at the
mhm,
same time, because of the size, it's so grand and profound,
mhm.
so yeah.
Mm.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
yeah, oh my God. I'm looking at that lift. So we're
Yeah.
we're on Taylor Street in Springfield. And well, you're on Taylor Street in Springfield. And you're how many feet up in the air? I mean,
55 feet.
okay. So you and your wife Priya have
Hmm.
done a number of murals
Yeah.
in the area,
Yeah.
Northampton, East Hampton,
Yeah.
Springfield. Um, And one question that comes to mind is, where do you begin? Like, how do you take, I mean, your work is large, but not that large, and how do you take work and then you're going to make it on a 50-foot by 150-foot side of a building? How do you do that? How
You
do you
start
start?
you start with a thumbnail. Yeah, so it always starts with a drawing. Fun fact, um, Priya and I usually get asked to do stuff together, or there's no one that we trust, to work with.
Mm,
So if I get a project, then she'll help me, and she get. So at this occasion, we kind of tossed a coin, and then it was her turn to come up with a composition, because like two creative forces kind of butt heads.
mm,
um yeah, so it was her creation, and it's kind of the stuff that she was dealing with at the time.
mhm.
And then yeah, so I was just there playing second fiddle, but at the same time, you could see the stripes start to come in. That's kind of like a signature of mine, and like how I'd break up the space
Mm,
and stuff. And I painted the figure on the right, and then she painted the figure on the left.
mhm.
So it's really good experience, and I'd love to do something even larger.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so it starts with a sketch, but for murals we use a projector, just because that's the quickest
Mm,
way to get the thing down.
mhm.
Some artists use a grid, but for me that would be so time consuming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we use a projector, and we draw reasonably well enough to be able to correct, because the projector can skew stuff, right?
Right,
But
right. Yeah.
we can correct it
Mhm,
going, yeah, because we did do some minor corrections and
mhm,
stuff like
mhm.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the final, right?
Yeah,
This is the
yeah.
final. Yeah,
That's actually me. I heard them.
yeah, yeah. Well, what's great is that in a couple of weeks I'm going to be talking to Priya. So
What?
yeah, I'm going to be doing an interview with Priya on
She
March
didn't
10th.
tell me. She didn't
Oh,
tell
well,
me.
surprise.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to be
Wow.
talking. So it's really great that it sort of fell like this, that um uh I spoke to you first, and that I'm going to speak to her next, but that there is overlap. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah,
really wonderful to hear that you both do work and participate with each other's projects
yeah,
like this.
yeah.
And of course it makes sense, but that it's, it depends on the relationship and the personalities, right?
Yeah, I mean, not every artist couple can work together, but I think for us it was crucial, just
Mhm.
supporting each other and stuff like that. And I love her vision, and I love her work. I think I'm her biggest fan. I never bought anything from her yet, but um,
Maybe you'll
I
get a
think,
discount.
yeah, I think I make up more in kind. But yeah, she's like phenomenally talented, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's just, yeah, and she's my biggest advisor. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, you
but
both
you,
both are. Yeah, you both are phenomenally talented. And I
thank
think
you.
it's really wonderful that you get to work together, because that just
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it.
So I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you one last question before we go, and that's going to be, what advice would you give your younger self? What advice would you have wanted to hear when you were a young artist?
What advice?
Yeah.
Don't give up. Focus a little bit more
Mm,
and just enjoy the ride. It's going to be awesome.
mm. That's great, Andre.
Yeah.
That's a great point to stop on. I want to thank you so much for
You're
taking the
so
time.
welcome. You're so welcome.
This was a real joy.
It's nice connecting with you again.
Yes, likewise. Your work has just exploded since the 2016 show, and it's just wonderful to reconnect now. And I hope when we're back to more in person, we can see your work back on the gallery walls again.
Yes, I would love that. I would
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much. Take care.